And it is a bright, summery morning here in the Midwest with intermittent clouds. And that is kind of the condition of existence on a small planet in a remote corner of an obscure part of the universe. And how are you this morning, Barrett?
I'm pretty good. I sometimes feel a little cloudy too, but yeah, I guess the good news is the clouds ultimately do pass. So
That's true. Although the clouds, this has been kind of a cloudy couple of weeks, even when we weren't getting rain. And it causes one to ponder the possibilities. And I was just reading an article in the New York Times that they're getting ready to open the Ark there in Kentucky, where this one fellow has spent $102 million and more building an exact replica of the biblical story of the Ark. And they're going to be filling it with animals that are sculpted. And the best part is they've even included dinosaurs in there, so you can see Adam and Eve with their pet T Rex, which I personally find very thrilling. But, it does cause you to wonder, could we be in for another deluge? And if so, can you book tickets on that ark? And I think that might be something for people to consider,
yeah,
instead of stashing money away for a retirement fund. Maybe you might want to think about a survival fund and get ready to join the animals on the ark.
it was only room for 2 humans though, Chris. So you better book your ticket early.
No, actually, don't forget. Noah had his entire family. He had three sons and their daughters.
Why are humans so special? Come on.
Because uh, it's that inexcusable part of reproduction, which of course is a sin. So, fornication is a sin. And a lot of people don't read past the story of the ark, but after the ark landed, uh, are you familiar with what the next stage of that story is all about?
No clue. No clue.
Oh, well, it is horrific. I mean, get yourself anchored there, hold on to the arms of your chair, because after the ark landed, Noah and his three sons, in a wild and somewhat bizarre celebration of having survived, got drunk, and the three boys fornicated with their father. So, once again, we see how these rich and juicy stories that come to us from the Bible perhaps have to be checked for quality issues, among other things. And I notice that you're just kind of stunned there and not saying anything.
Yeah, I'm not sure what to follow that up with.
It is one of those things that just makes you stop and go, "Wow, the Bible is a wholesome book. I want my kids to read this."
Yeah, yeah. I guess I missed out. I only read parts of it, so I think I've heard the sanitized version.
Oh well, yeah, it gets pretty down and out, down and dirty. A little S&M going on there, and then of course, how King David arose to the throne is also a rather grisly story because he seduced King Saul's son and then beheaded him in order to gain the throne of Israel. So, yeah, the Bible has got some serious intrigue going on in it, a little bit Shakespearean, and actually kind of in some ways like James Cameron's productions or something, the Alien.
Mm, yeah, yeah. Well, I know he's making more movies, so maybe there'll be a sequel to the Bible too.
That would be good, yes. Although I'm up for the, I guess it's next year that we get Avatar 2. And so I am chomping at the bit for that. I can hardly wait.
Yeah, I liked his first one too, and it does bring to mind a point, which is that sometimes people call A Course in Miracles the Third Testament. And I don't really kind of go along with that idea because I think that the Course is Jesus telling us straight up, like, it's not filtered through some other people, and it's not collected with a bunch of stories about a vengeful God. So I think the Course is really its own thing. I think it's helpful just to kind of make that distinction.
Oh, it absolutely is, because in reality, A Course in Miracles is not a denominational phenomenon, even though it is based on a personality that comes to us from a biblical account of the man Jesus. The truth is that, if circumstances had been better suited, it would have evolved in India or China, and it would have been the Buddha. So, it really is a thing of using imagery that we were familiar with, but it is definitely not a part of the Old and New Testaments in Christian tradition. It goes far, far beyond that.
Yeah. So speaking of the Course, our topic today is to continue on the obstacles to peace, which is in chapter 19, section 4. And yeah, we're going to look at the first obstacle to peace, which, as stated very clearly here, is the desire to get rid of it. Makes sense. That would be an obstacle to having peace, is not wanting peace.
And unfortunately, really when you look at the way this world operates, that is probably the most entrenched set of circumstances on every level that we are confronted with. Is that we do have that duality, that split mind. And so the things we long for are also the things that we are afraid of and unwilling to accept. And this really gets right into that kind of mindset that, it's something that on a deeper level we recognize we desire and need it. But on the conscious level, we have this desire to stop the process. So it's always a start and stop journey for us as we're getting deeper and deeper into the Course.
Sounds like me trying to learn stick shift.
Really? Oh, well, that was my childhood. I think I was 14 years old when I first drove a big rig semi that we used on the ranch. So we had 18 gears going forward.
Holy cow.
So it was, that was an interesting way to grow up in Colorado in the 1950s and early 60s, when America was still pretty much celebrating Wally and Beaver's adventures and eating a lot of white bread and mayo sandwiches.
White bread.
And mayo.
Mayo, even better.
That's right. You can't leave the mayo off of your white bread, or it's too damn dry.
Well, in spite of my my automatic transmission experiences, I can definitely identify with that starting and stopping. I think everyone who is a student of the Course really can. That there's this real strong part of us that wants to know the truth, that wants to experience peace. And then simultaneously, we're like terrified of it. We're running away from it. And that's what this section is going to explore. Just to read part of it here. The first obstacle that peace must flow across is your desire to get rid of it, for it cannot extend unless you keep it. You are the center from which it radiates outward to call the others in. You are its home, its tranquil dwelling place from which it gently reaches out, but never leaving you. If you would make it homeless, how can it abide within the Son of God? So he's really telling us that the peace is in us, and it's only our belief somehow that we have pushed it away, that we have ended it, that we have corralled it into its own separate enclosure, and that we're outside of that really is our problem. So we have to keep being willing to look at that, to look at the part of us that actually doesn't want the peace. And that's really the path that we have to coming to experience the peace for ourselves.
Well, and what that is hinged on, interestingly enough, if you really stop and look at it in depth, is our unwillingness to give up that sense of personal self, because it says we have to recognize the peace within us. But it also very clearly points to the direction that that has to be shared. And in order for us to share it, we have to recognize our oneness with all of God's creation. And I think that ends up becoming a real stumbling block right off the bat for a lot of people, because, you know, it's like I'm a Republican and you're a Democrat. So there's no grace between those two big walls. You know, I'm a Christian, you're a Muslim. Whatever it is, we have all these ideas about other people. And until we really start to look deeply into that realization that there is no other people, that there is only this one self that is expressing itself in infinite form, we're pretty much stuck on that level of making the gifts of God, making the things God has presented to us inaccessible to ourselves, because we have to be able to give that peace to every person on the planet, and to every being on the planet, to every spark of consciousness on the planet. That's where we have to extend that to in order to be able to accept it for ourselves.
Yeah, and initially when we get that idea, it seems like a tall order to be openly loving towards Osama bin Laden, to be loving towards Saddam Hussein, to be loving to, you know, all of these people that we think are awful. We have to get that they are just insane, and that they are acting out of that insanity, but that doesn't actually stop their light from being pure. It doesn't actually change the fact that the Christ is in them, because the Christ is everywhere. There is nowhere that the Christ is not. And as you said so clearly, that's the only way that we're going to come to experience that the Christ is in us. Because if we are excluding anyone from the sonship, we are excluding ourselves. And that's been our problem this whole time, is that it really looks like someone else is taking our peace away. But it's never been the case. It's only ever been us who is removing ourselves from happiness. And that's actually really good news. At first, we were kind of sometimes horrified by that fact, like, oh my God, I did all this to myself. But it's actually really empowering, because it means that we're back in the driver's seat. We might have pretended that we were in the passenger seat or the back seat, but we've been sitting behind the wheel the whole time. And you know, whether it's a manual or automatic transmission, once we're in the driver's seat, we're gonna take control of the wheel again, and we're gonna make the choice that actually is kind and loving, rather than the one that is separating and objectifying.
That is very true. As we go on with this passage here, the second um, paragraph gives us the Holy Spirit's purpose rests in peace within you. So then again, we're starting to look at these dichotomies, how life works, how we are identifying ourselves. And it says, you are still willing to let it join you wholly. You still oppose the will of God just by a little. And that little is a limit you would place upon the whole. So basically, if you don't want the peace of God for every living soul and every living creature on the planet, then you can't have it yourself. And this is a point that I really find interesting in the Course in Miracles, because the way the Course works, we are not given a mid-range, you know. And if we do go back and look at the New Testament in the Bible, there is a passage where Jesus says, you know, you have to be either hot or cold, or I will spew you out of my mouth. Well, basically what he's saying here in a kind of a flowery way is that there's no midpoint in truth. Truth is either truth for you and every part of the Christ consciousness without exclusion of anyone, or else it's not. So, this becomes the invariable message or the inevitable message throughout the course, in that none of us get out of here without all of us getting out of here at the same time.
Mm.
And I think that when we really embrace that recognition, when we're really able to accommodate the acceptance of that, that's when we start to actually feel that peace. And I can testify to the fact that in the last year, with my own meditations, I'm finding it very, very easy now to just slide into that region and do that invocation, going inwardly, and then evoking that. So it's an invocation that becomes an evocation, so that it becomes literally a space that you occupy, that you inhabit, where you do feel that connection and that deep sense of peace.
Yeah, and I appreciate that really testament to the fact that this works. I mean, there are times where we're doing this where we sometimes don't see the outer change as we're doing our forgiveness work, and we can start to question, like, is this really making anything happen? But it does work, and eventually, even if we kind of hit these plateaus where it seems like nothing is changing, we can't really judge what is actually happening. We can't judge our own progress on this path, but we can get, we can get these telltale signs, like, okay, I can slip into a sense of peacefulness much easier. Or that thing that happened that always used to drive me crazy. Now, oh, okay, yeah, it's still annoying, but I don't get so upset about it. And these are the kind of hallmarks of spiritual progress, that we feel like we're sailing with more of an even keel than we used to through these sometimes stormy waters in our life. So, yeah, I think that having these touchstones really reinforces that we're moving in the right direction, and that this really does make a difference in our lives.
That is very true. And I'll just go forward real fast here with what we were looking at. At the conclusion of that second paragraph, it says, "What you would still contain behind your little barrier and keep separate from your brother seems mightier than the universe, for it would hold back the universe and its creator." In other words, your stupid little ego is the one thing that is creating all the conflict here. And then it says, "This little wall would hide the purpose of heaven and keep it from heaven." So, really, when we start looking at it from that perspective, it's like, maybe it is time for me to review what my ego's needs and desires are, and what, this part of me that is holding out from a willingness to join this vast ocean of divinity that is all of us. That little tiny mote in your own eye is something that is going to blind you to the the celestial experience that's right at your fingertips.
Yeah. That line, the mote in your brother's eye and the log in your own, always reminded me, like, how did you get a whole log in your eye? That seems like really hard.
Well, see, that works a lot better if you're a cartoon. See,
Oh,
a lot of us don't realize that we are, in fact, cartoons. And so we don't allow for those experiences that can be very positive teaching tools. But as soon as you realize that you and Bugs Bunny are pretty much the same kind of creation, then life becomes so much easier.
boop, 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 boop.
There you go.
All right. Well, I think that the kind of resolution to the statement that you just read in the course is a few paragraphs later. He says, "To overcome the world is no more difficult than to surmount your little wall. For in the miracle of your holy relationship, without this barrier is every miracle contained. There is no order of difficulty in miracles, for they are all the same. Each is a gentle winning over from the appeal of guilt to the appeal of love. So really here he's letting us know that as solid as this barrier seems when we are choosing guilt, when we're choosing that silly little ego, it really is meaningless, and it is easily surpassed and undone when we are wanting peace. And sometimes I hear from people who say, "Well, I do want peace. I do want peace. How come I don't feel it?" You know. And the challenge is that when I'm saying about when we want peace, it does have to be absolute. We have to want peace 100%. We have to want it with all of our heart. And what we come to see as we start working with the material is that for the most part we don't really want peace unequivocally. We want peace on our terms. We want peace in a certain way. We want peace if it meets all of our demands. Um, and we find that we're actually holding peace at bay, as this section is talking about. And we start to have to be deeply, deeply honest with ourselves and look at the part of us that doesn't want the peace, that really wants to maintain this little barrier, this little wall. And acknowledging that is actually a really big, helpful part of our healing path.
It absolutely is. You know, one of the things, since once again I'll bring up the political thing, since we're in a political year, is that if you can see Hillary or Donald or Bernie or whoever it is that you're absolutely vehemently against as being Jesus, if you can stop long enough with your own internal dialogue and your condemnation and your anger and your frustration, and just say, that's Jesus in front of the Trump Hotel, you know, expounding on his reality or his comprehension of reality, and I can forgive myself for seeing the darkness and go beyond that and see the Christ within. And that really is the turning point. Until you can get to that plateau, you really have excluded yourself from being able to access that peace that does pass understanding, because it is incomprehensible when you settle into that space. It's really remarkable how you feel this coolness and this sense of carefreeness and the sense of being supported and embraced. It is quite a stunning experience, and on a lot of levels absolutely inexplicable. But you're not going to get there until you can get past that desire to condemn somebody else and to say they can't have the peace that is here for me.
It's so true. I mean, that it has to be unequivocal. It has to cover everyone and everything in our whole world. And it's you know, it sounds like a tall order, but it is achievable. And Jesus wouldn't be giving us this path if it weren't something we could do. And remembering that he's here with us, I think he's the elder brother that's guiding us on our path is really helpful too. Because sometimes as we're doing this work, we can feel kind of all alone. But to know that we're never alone, that we always have him holding our hand if we're willing, I think that's really reassuring. And,
It definitely is.
all of this reminds me too, you talked about the peace that passeth understanding. And I remember, you know, being in college and my math class, and I thought, wow, this is the calculus that passeth understanding.
And yes, but by the end of the semester, it was all starting to add up. So,
oh,
well, I just, you know, you give me an opening, I just have to go there. But maybe we can wind this down for this week with this next paragraph here,
okay.
which is paragraph 4. And wow, what a beautiful thought here. There is a hush in heaven, a happy expectancy, a little pause of gladness in acknowledgement of the journey's end. For heaven knows you well as you know heaven. No illusion stand between you and your brother now. Look not upon the little wall of shadows, the sun has risen over it. How can a shadow keep you from the sun? And that's what we're working on now, is getting out of these clouds and shadows and fog banks, and getting into that place where you're just standing in the sun and being blinded by the light in the most spiritual sense.
I love it. I love it. Yeah. And I think, after a while, it might feel a little blinding, but it reminds me of the story of Plato in the cave, is that the prisoner who freed himself, at first, he went towards the light, but it was too bright. But over time, he got used to it, and he was able to handle the light, and he emerged out of the cave and into the real world outside. And that's kind of how our path is, that at times the light feels blinding, and that's why we want to get rid of it. It's too much. But over time, we get used to it, and we're able to accept more and more light in our experience until finally we're ready to accept it all. And then we're just in that state of pure joy, pure bliss. And yeah, you're on your way. We're all on our way to that experience.
Yes, and the best part of it is to know that everything is all right. If you're still feeling like, oh, I've got so far to go, just sit down, relax, and realize everything is all right. And then start your daily practice with that thought that I am exactly where I'm supposed to be. I'm doing exactly what I'm supposed to be doing. It's all right. And as time evaporates, I will arrive at this level of awakenedness where I'm fully joined with that light and living in a state of peace.
Well, I'm really glad to have joined with you today, Chris. This sharing is always so helpful to me, and we have a few laughs anyway in our silly selves.
Well, I think that's the thing that makes it so much more pleasurable, is that we can laugh at it all and forgive all of the craziness that appears to be surrounding us.
Nice, nice. Well, in this illusion of the world, I have other Course in Miracles things I'm doing, and healing classes I'm leading. So I don't know if I'm going to name any specifically right now, but just a reminder that that's all listed on my website, barretthedin.com. And also to announce that you and I are doing a live event in person coming up this month, July 31st. So we're going to be doing our Course in Miracles workshop called Step into the Light at Transformation in Alsip, Illinois, Sunday afternoon, 1 to 4. So we'd love to have you there if you're available.
Yes, it is going to be a wonderful experience, I'm sure. And, I always show up with cookies or something. So if you want a treat, you'll have to roll over and play dead. Oh, sorry.
Oh, so that's the part I was missing. I was trying to figure out. I wanted to get this time. So.
Yes, well, that's what we all end up doing, is playing dead, and then we have to do the whole thing all over again. So hopefully we can get out of that cycle.
That's right.
But yes, at the last day of July, and the sun will be in Leo, and we'll be gathering in the south side of Chicago for a communion of souls.
All right. So, and whether you're there in body or whether you're there in spirit, we are all one. And maybe that's a good idea for us to just wrap up our session today with that. No matter what form is appearing to you, no matter how the world looks around you, know that on the deepest level, we cannot be apart. We never have been, we never will be, and we are not right now in this moment.
Absolutely. Well, Barrett, you go out and have a glorious weekend. I'm sure you got stuff going on.
Yep, I will have a lot of fun. Maybe getting out kayaking a little bit. So I hope you have a blast as well.
Yes, my grandson's high school graduation party's coming up after he went to China and did all these amazing things, and so it is going to be a fun weekend. Get out there and enjoy it.
I will. Yeah, that sounds great. So you have a blast, and we'll talk to you next week.
Sounds good.
Bye, man.
Bye.